In the 1960s, there were a good number of Supreme Court cases revolving around the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. They completely changed how arrests and trials would be handled in the years to follow. The first case here is Gideon v. Wainwright. In 1961, Clarence Earl Gideon was arrested for breaking into a pool hall and robbing the vending machines. Like you'd expect from someone who's resorted to robbing vending machines, Gideon couldn't afford an attorney and asked for one to be appointed for him. However, the judge said that Florida only appointed attorneys for people possibly facing the death penalty, so his request was denied and he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Gideon appealed to the Florida Supreme Court, arguing that his conviction was unconstitutional because he didn't have an attorney, but he was flat out denied. Still feeling pretty salty, he brought his case to the U.S. Supreme Court and was accepted. In 1963, the court decided unanimously in favor of Gideon, saying that Florida's denial of Gideon's request was unconstitutional under the Sixth Amendment's right to an attorney. They agreed that it should be required for the state to provide defendants with attorneys even if they couldn't afford them, and are charged of a crime that would result in 1 or more years of prison, rather than just the death penalty. This was extended even further in 1972's Argersinger v. Hamlin, which took out the 1-year requirement and just applied it to every jail sentence. The combination of these cases made it so that the big rich boys didn't have as much of an upper hand in court decisions. Yet another classic underdog story. The final case we've got is Miranda v. Arizona. Whoops, wrong Miranda. Nope, not that one either. There we go. But anyway, if you've ever heard of Miranda rights, this is where that comes from. So basically, in 1963, Ernesto Miranda was accused of robbery, kidnapping, and rape. The whole shebang. However, the police didn't exactly tell him what his rights were before they pried a confession out of him, which made up most of the prosecution's evidence and got him convicted. So after being sentenced to 20 to 30 years in prison, Miranda went to the Arizona Supreme Court like, "My dudes, this was obtained unconstitutionally." And they were like, "Yeah, no." So he went to the U.S. Supreme Court instead. Surprise, it worked. In 1966, the court ruled 5-4 in favor of Miranda, saying that the police couldn't use the confession as evidence because it violated the Fifth Amendment's right to refuse self-incrimination and the Sixth Amendment's right to an attorney. This is why we now have Miranda rights, which are the things that you've heard even if you haven't been arrested because they're in all the crime shows. These rights kept law enforcement from being too powerful. Of course, none of this really did much for Miranda himself because there was a retrial a few months after and he was still found guilty anyway and was stabbed to death in a bar fight in 1976. But at least the suspect had the Miranda rights read to him before questioning, right? As you can see just from these two cases, the Supreme Court is all about fair trials and reasonable police conduct, which kind of makes sense because, judicial branch. Fairness is what they do. Cases such as these, along with many others, have helped to equalize the playing field for people of various social standings to keep a fair process, fair.